There's so many good picking stories out there that have nothing to do with making money because you make no money. We go to a little town, I guess south of Greensboro.
Who's we?
We're going to leave the we out of it. No benefit whatsoever to say who I was with. And we go to a little town, 421, I think it's called Pleasant Garden. It's not far from Greensboro at all.
421 makes me think of Liberty.
Well, that's too far. But anyway, Pleasant Garden's way. I started to get a map out to look, see if it was on the map as that, but I'm real sure that's what it was. Now, this town was to the right of 421, and you started in on it on one road. I think it was Main Street. I don't know if they called it Main Street or not, but it was Main Street for that town. And riding along, you know, it's houses on the left and right, and then there's businesses on the left and right. More on the left, seems like. So I'm riding along, looking to the left, and I go by this house, and it has a kind of a square front porch, unusual, very old, and probably built back about 1900. And you could tell that the front of the house has been a showcase, basically, for a business. And I thought then that, you know, this might be a good place to stop and see what was going on years ago. And so I drive by the house, and the driveway is to the left of the house, on past it a little bit. I drive up in there, and I see right away that the back doors of the house, and then I also see a building, a pretty good sized building. It wasn't real tall or anything, but it was a pretty good building back there, and it was rectangular shape. It went way back. So I get out, and best I remember, a woman came to the door, but she quickly sent her husband or somebody like that out there to talk to me. And of course, when he came out, it was so unusual. He was, to me, I mean, I couldn't help but laugh. I almost bit my arm from laughing so hard. He was a little short, fat fella, and he had a little necktie on, and he was dressed up, you know, a little bit, and living there. And I told him what I wanted to do. I said, I'm interested in buying things, and I just wondered what might be out here in this building that's so big. And he said, well, sir, we can go out there. And I don't know if I should tell this part like this or not, but I think he told me that years ago, this was a dealership for Stanley Steamer automobiles. Now that's the type of automobile that you don't understand or know about because it was totally steam, and they were terrible at selling. People did not buy them. The Model T was out there on its way doing everything, and you could learn to drive the Model T and start it and stop it in just a few hours. Well, to start a Stanley Steamer automobile, it's an hour of preparation that you have to do before you hear the car even run. And they were heavy, and they were painted pretty, but they were painted with a brush, and you could see brush strokes all over them. And that's just the way that the company did them. And I don't have any idea why anybody would want to buy one, especially when you can buy the Model T Ford and move on right away with it. You had, at that time period, there were a lot of people that came off of steam-powered machinery, and that's all they had ever done was work in a steam situation. And so I think they must have thought that these type people would be the ones that wanted to buy the car, you know. And it never was a real good seller. or anything. But so anyway, the man tells me that this was a dealership for Stanley Steamer. And he said in the front of the house there, which is now just the front porch, but it's closed in, was a showroom, and there would be one sitting out there. And then this building back here was the shop where he worked on them and did this and that, you know. I didn't really know what he was talking about because I knew nothing about a Stanley Steamer car or automobile. Never heard of one. My parents didn't talk about things like that, and as far as I know, that it never was mentioned. But anyway, I just listened, and he said, let's go out here in this building. And I said, well, okay, that's what I want to do. Because I figured it could be old signs about the business, or it could be good office equipment, or such as filing cabinets, things like that, or whatever. So I go in there, and it's pretty much just an open building with a wooden floor down on the ground. And it was a little bit buckled, but it was little narrow boards, and never forget that. And when you walked on it, it creaked. And in the very back of the building was 3, best I remember, Stanley Steamer cars. And were they complete? I don't really know. They didn't have the tires on them, but the tires were over there at a stack, and you could see them, you know. And they just basically sat on the ground, it looked like. Well, I looked around to see for items that I might could use and buy, and he told me, he said, I'll sell these cars. He said, I want to get rid of them. He said, I've had them here long enough, and he said, I need to do something else with the building. I need to get them out of here. And I said, well, I'm sitting here with what, $100 in my pocket. My friend's probably got 10,000, but to bring him in on it, I don't know what he would say about. We'd never had bought any automobiles, and like I say, these Stanley Steamer cars didn't even look like a car to me. But we talked about it, and best I remember, he wanted $8,000 for what was in the building, all the parts. And there was a lot of them. There was bins full of parts. I didn't tell you about that, but there's little yellow boxes, and orange boxes, and they had little parts, Stanley Steamer, valves and gauges, and they're just full of stuff like that. And it would go to the band, I guess, and they would need parts for. And all that I could have, though, if I'd pay that kind of money for. Well, I think at that time I went and talked to my friend and told him, and he basically.
Why are we being so secret about who was in the car with you? I don't understand. Was it Doug?
No, this was way before him.
Okay, well then who was it?
Well, who really did it?
Briggs? No.
Didn't know him.
No.
How about Ledford?
Ledford? Okay.
Yeah.
Why such a secret? Gosh.
It's not a secret. It's just that, he cost me a lot of money that day because he turned his nose up and all that stuff.
Because he wanted to buy clocks.
Well, yes, shit like flat irons and wash pots and stuff. And they just didn't have that kind of stuff. And we were offered these cars at a very reasonable price. And the man was willing to negotiate, just make an offer. I'd like to get rid of it. I can remember that. I had no idea what they might be worth or where in the world I would ever sell one at. I didn't know anybody that dealt in stuff like that. And you got to understand, I couldn't pick up the phone and Google Stanley Steamer cars, tell me about it. And because we didn't have that. There was nobody to go ask about those cars. I knew nobody.
So what year was this? 1980, 1970?
When I was there, the cars were like 1902
No, I get that.
through 1915, 20, somewhere like in there's when they made them. And
What year was it that you were picking? Late 70s?
yeah, late 70s, probably 78, 77, somewhere along in there. I never forget it.
Wow.
And
So you screwed up.
went there and basically they just did not have any kind of little items whatsoever that I remember that we even bought out of this big warehouse. And like I said, the whole back end was bins of parts, just little boxes, and every one of them was full of parts, you know. And there were catalogs, and there were this and there were that, all kinds of stuff like that. Everything you would have needed. I don't remember seeing a big porcelain sign or nothing saying buy your Stanley Steamer here or anything like that.
No.
But I don't know if somebody got in there and maybe bought the signs. Even back then, people would buy stuff like that, you know. But I don't really remember any signs. And then again, I might not have even noticed, you know, because I knew nothing about signs either. Nobody did in 1977. Wasn't nobody wanting them. Coca-Cola sign maybe or something. But one that would be talking about an automobile like this. And basically, like I said, the story has no terrific ending or anything. We leave, and 10 years goes by in my life, and I'm back in the town, and I go there again. And I had another person with me at this time, and I told him about him. He says, we'll buy the car. Doug. He said, I said, well, let's just see if they're still there. And so, best I remember, the man or the woman one came out, and they remembered me and everything, but they said, you wouldn't buy then, you're not going to buy now. She said, we got rid of most of all this stuff, and it seems like it was still some parts of the cars still in there, but somebody else had found and realized what this place was, and they ended up with it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was just a big mistake on my part, I guess, but I didn't know what to do. And but I did go back, and we did find things to buy when me and the last boy went, and we bought some things, but it was nothing to do with those Stanley Steamer cars. But anyway, I've never told that to anybody, and it was just a great mistake in my early days of picking that I didn't find somebody that would have been interested in that and asked questions and figured it out. I did not figure it out. And, you know, I'm just telling you, some of the best picking stories were total failures.
Well,
and that was one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have this that I say. I say, when I wrote the book, Picking Stories, okay, haven't printed this book yet. You roll your eyes at it if you want to, but the done. You didn't just roll your eyes? Okay.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I got video evidence. If you rolled your eyes,
No, not about that. If I rolled them, it's because I'm
Okay.
So,
yeah.
one of the
Not here to argue with you, you know, because you'd have been the same way if it wasn't a jug or something sitting there in that shit. Oh, fuck with that stuff, Dad. Yeah.
a car,
I mean, heavy.
3 cars,
They're very little.
don't they have a winch? I agree that I don't.
Who knows? Has some facilities to move stuff like that.
I
But
can't.
they were all gone. Somebody got them.
What I'm trying to get at is, in my book, one of the first pages I write says, it's not my victories. It's not the money that I've made that allows me to write this book. It's the millions of dollars of items that I have walked over
Right.
because I didn't know what it was.
Well, that's 100% with me. I left a fortune out there in this world because I would not, I don't know, research anything. You know, if I hadn't seen it sell at an auction or something like that, or knew somebody that dealt in something like that, I don't know I just had a deaf ear to it. But I'd like for you to remember that story. And if you really want to know about a Stanley Steamer, you can Google it, and it's a lot on there now. And I invite you boys to do that. And listen to Jay Leno. He's a car collector in California. You know, he's famous and has a lot of money, and he has a lot of those cars. And he goes through an hour of starting that car. Can you imagine having to start? It took an hour to get your car ready. A lot of people left them with a boiler burning, but when they woke up the next morning, overnight, the car and the garage and half the house was burnt down. Yeah, that's what kind of thing would happen. So anyway, if anybody's interested, you can see what I'm talking about. But I'd like to use a little bit of time to tell another picking story. Would you like for me to tell another good picking story that?
Don't ask me. Let's ask them. Do y'all want to hear another picking story?
How much time?
I'm not talking to them. I'm not talking to them.
Let's
I'm talking to them.
Let's get off of this. This has really happened, but I'll say this: my time for thinking, because Matt asked me 2 days ago to think about stuff, and I couldn't think about nothing. But when I'm laying in the bed at 8:30, and I'm wondering whether the wife's done gone to work or whatever, I ain't heard a sound out of her, and no dogs or nothing, And I'm laying there, and boy, my mind is wide open, and it just thinks of everything that I've ever done in my life. And it comes to me a little story that's real, and it's one of the best picking stories I probably got for making a little extra money. And
Do I know it?
I don't know. You probably have heard some of it, but there's a road that runs between Martinsville, Collinsville to Roanoke. And on the way, you go to the outskirts of Henry, Virginia. And right, I'll say this, I shouldn't say it, but right up the road from that, where you see the sign Henry, Virginia, is the shore house where the little girl got kidnapped and they never found her. And it's been a mystery to this day. I even was picking on the hill over there one day, and I got held by a man at gunpoint till the law got there, thinking that I might have been the person who did it, because I asked so many questions about it. But anyway, when I saw the sign that said to Henry, Virginia, I said, well, hell, I ain't never been there, so let's go. So we went on down in there, and there again, it wasn't nothing but a little bit of a river, and some houses on both sides of the river. They were kind of up, So I go to one place, and that's the easiest to get to and looks the best to me. And I can see an oak icebox, a little small one, a lift top, sitting at the foot of the steps down in this kind of a basement-like thing. And I said, well, damn, I sure would like to have that, because they brought good back then. Well, the man came out, he told me, he said, I'll let you have that. He said, you need to go over there to cross the river to that big white house. You can see it as plain as day. He said, that 2-story house is been there forever. And he said, it's owned by Davis, Mr. Davis. And I said, well, what's so special about it? He said, well, he was a doctor. They said he was a doctor, and he lived a good life and had money, so there's going to be things over there, and he's still there. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll go over there, And so, y'all, I get over there. I'm skipping about a little bit, but I got to tell this fast. I get over there to the big 2-story house, and have you ever been? The house, you really couldn't tell whether it was 100 years old or 50 years old. But what you could tell was the shrubbery around it. I mean, the bases of the shrubbery were just huge and humongous. It'd been there for 100 years, And up under the shrubbery was broken pottery, like you love it, the James River crocks and stuff. I mean, good ones, but broke all to pieces. And I'll never forget that. And I said, Doug, this is going to be something. I said, if we can get this man to the door, I said, this pottery is real. It's real to this house. I know it is. It's never been moved. It's sat there and crumbled over the years. I said, the back porch is loaded, because that's where I went to. I didn't go to the front door. And it wasn't too long till the man came to the front door and hollered, and I went back around there, and it was the old man, Mr. Davis. And I told him what I wanted to do, and I was driving a Ford Ranger. You know what that is? A little pickup truck with a long bed. No real rack or anything, best I can remember on it. And It's not a very big pickup truck at all. It's economically good, but it wasn't the type truck you really needed for a big load of stuff, you know. So next thing you know, we go in the house through that back door because I told him I saw things on the back porch that I might be interested in. And I liked the blue deal because there was a washboard sitting there, and I made a comment about it, and damn, he liked to run me off in, but never do that. And just get the washboard the last thing, you know. They were worth about $2 or $3, all they were worth. And so I remember going through the house and this stuff sitting everywhere. And he takes us up to the very top of the house, which was his laboratory or office. It was full of everything you could think about, glass and a lab, you know, burners and things, and flask and all these pocketoy jars and stuff like this. And it was just full of this. And then it was boxes, you opened them up, had skeletons of hands. There were skulls. There were all kinds of things. Well, me and Doug, we didn't know about stuff like that. And I said, sir, this ain't really nothing what I want. But I saw things as we came up here that I'd like to ask you about. And so we went right into the high back oak beds and bought every one of them. And the dressers, they were all painted white. And but they were beautiful. Some of the best beds I'd ever bought in my life. And but all that doctor stuff, there again, the biggest mistake I made there in that house. And we ended up getting things that would blow your mind out of that house. But we did not buy any of that stuff that day. The skulls, there was a little casket about, I don't know, 25 inches long. You opened it up, it had a little baby in it, a skeleton. And it was just stuff that blew your mind. And it was actually scary to me. And I said, we can't sell that kind of thing. We got to go for this other stuff, you know. So we did. And I can't remember the words the man would say every time that he'd take me up on stuff, but one of them was, how you going to haul it? And I said, well, we'll worry about that. We go downstairs in his bedroom, and there's a box sitting over there with a lift top lid. I mean, original finish, and what it was sugar chest. Well, I'd never seen a sugar chest to mount to anything. The ones I'd seen were totally different. But this one had the cones inside it and everything, the dividers. And we bought it, paid him $400 for it, I'll never forget it. And I'll skip about this. We got all that stuff loaded, and we got back down to where we were going to unload the stuff at the same day. And Doug said, that sugar chest out there, I'll give $1,200 for it. I said, $1,200? Well, you bought that. But I think he sold it to Bill Ivy for like $12,000. But anyway, we've got some real good stuff out of that house. Now, did I ever go back? I went right back because I made some questions to other people, and they said that skeleton stuff and all that doctor stuff is worth some money. Get it all. Clear the room out. But when I went back, he would let me have it, so I never did get it. And then his family stepped in, and they were always there. And it seems like the 3 or 4 more times in my life that I went back. I never could buy anything else there, but we really made a lick that day. We bought all kinds of real good, quality antique things, you know. And those beds and wardrobes and stuff like that, they brought a fortune. Don't ask me how we got it all on the truck, but we did.
And that year was what?
That year would have been from 1985 to 1990, somewhere along in that is when that would have took place. And but I went back for years because I went across the street and I bought more stuff from the man that had the ice box down in the little basement, and not that much, but and he would inform me I'd go there, so he would tell me what's going on with that Davis house over there. And finally, that man died, and but his family moved up and took over that house. But I never got anything else there. I tried, but I never did. And I could have got it that day. He would have gave it to me. I could have probably bought all the medical stuff in there for $100, maybe just a little bit more. And it seems like we did get one skull, human skull, a real one. You know, you're really not supposed to have stuff like that, but because it was under science, we got by with it. But it brought good. And any questions about this lie I just told? I mean, not a lie. That's a true story. Have I ever told you that before about that?
No, that's not one that I remember. It was a good picking story, though.
Oh, that was real. That was so real. It all happened in one day. I remember riding down that road so many times going to the actual town of Henry was way off the Highway 220. Probably really wasn't over 5 or 6 miles, but it was in the mountains, and you wound a different way to drive, and it was really paid to go down in there, because there was a lot of other places we bought from too, just different things here and there. But I'll never forget, that's a true story. And that's what happens. He didn't need any money, and he didn't really want to sell that sugar chest. And we had to keep going up on it.
Was it a sugar chest or a cellaret? You said it had a bunch of different holes.
No, it had the dividers in it, cones, where maple sugar sat here, so white sugar, this, that. But anyway, I enjoyed it, and I tried it.
So is that all we get? You're gonna leave us with that?
That's enough.
Have you ever been arrested picking?
Well, not where I spent the night in jail, but they've done everything to us, from the lies that people would call and tell about two people being in the neighborhood. And those stories aren't really worth talking about. I have a lot of real good Virginia stories, and I know this is North Carolina, but I'd like to talk to you again about some of them. I'll try to brush up on my thinking. They're so long ago when some of this stuff happened.
When you used to ride around in the 1980s, when you used to ride around, did you find pie safes on the porch with all the pottery around it, things like that?
That's the way it was at Davis's house. That's one of the first things we bought was the pie safe on the back porch, painted white. It just slammed full of pottery and stuff. And also, he let me walk totally around the back of the house, and I found complete pieces of pottery then, because it was sitting everywhere. I mean, nobody had ever been to that house trying to buy stuff, or he wouldn't sell it or something.
Right. And try to describe that feeling of.
Well, I knew that blue pottery with the money trees and stuff on it, Henry Lounge and all that. I knew that stuff was money, and I could sell that quick and make money, and that would sell real good the Friday night that was coming out. And I wanted that stuff. My heart beat fast, because you didn't know about a high back bed that you paid $50 for, and it's painted white. You didn't know what it was going to do. But I'll never forget those beds went crazy, because there's 3 beds at max. Come out of 3 different bedrooms. And that bunch from over there at Walter Williams High School, they was just getting into antiques. They bought all those beds and stripped them, and wardrobes and all that stuff we bought. The wardrobe, you say, how'd you carry it? Well, they knocked apart, and you just stacked them. They just they were easy to haul.
So nowadays, I think it's important for everybody to understand that a lot of people do the antiques on the side. A lot of people, they buy some antiques, and they have a space in a shop, and they go put, you go buy 50 pieces of pottery, you put them in a shop, you're going to have those 50 pieces of pottery a year later. You're not going to sell 50 pieces of pottery out of a booth in a shop. You go to an antique show, and you take an entire trailer full of antiques, and you put it in your tent. You're going to pack up half your tent in 2 days and haul it home. You're going to have the same merchandise every year, right? That's not how he did it. He would buy a truck and trailer full on a Monday, and by Friday, it was gone. Bye.
out of here. And he would start Monday. And so these guys were riding around in pickup trucks. They didn't have vans. Back then, if you had a van, you would have been arrested for kidnapping. If you'd have put up in a van.
Been scared to death because they'd say, what are you covering up? You know,
Right.
somebody had one. I can't remember who it was, and they had a lot of trouble.
Wayne had the first van that I remember.
Anyway, yeah.
And then what helped picking so much was the picking show. I remember getting pulled over when I was like in my early 20s. The picking show was out. The first cop pulled us over, and he was all gung-ho like we were doing something wrong. And then the second cop pulled up. He was a little bit older. He saw the sign on the truck that said, "Pick in America, we buy old items." And he walked up and slapped the guy on the back. "Hey, man, don't you know who these guys are? Hey, y'all bought anything today?" I mean, it just totally changed. That show helped everything. And back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I mean, when you just knocked on a random person's door, you never knew how they were going to take it. But you just work through that. And if they say no, they say no. You get in the truck and you go to the next one. And then you go to the next one. And I mean, 30, 40 years of that every week. Didn't you win the first year at Mebane? Didn't you win some award for like the most sold or something? What?
Somebody that worked by themselves the most. That's right.
Yeah.
Other people sold more than me, but it was two of them. It was a pair of people that went out and did the work. So therefore, you understand how to calculate that.
What was the best item you ever left, you know?
Left?
Left. Couldn't buy it. Left. Did you?
So many. I don't have no idea. I just told you about those cars. And for the first time in your life. Yeah. The reason I never mentioned a story like that is because there just was no way to really end it. And I asked myself this morning when I started thinking about it, well, how are you going to end that? You know, well, you're going to end it by admitting that you made a huge mistake, probably.
But you learned from your mistakes.
But those cars would have had some value, but not that much because they needed so much. I'm sure.
Right.
You know, they weren't showroom condition.
You probably lost 20 grand.
Stuff like that is very, very hard to move, especially when you don't know how to move it. You know, sitting there with these cars on the ground, sitting on that wood floor. I mean, the wheels over there. I mean, you gonna jack them up, put wheels on them, and roll them in? I ain't with that. Just no incentive to mess with it. People was with me the same way.
So I don't know if people knows, but you're also an artist, okay? And this is how I qualify you.
Can I say one thing about the art? My brother sent me a picture of a sunset. He's telling me about it yesterday on the phone when he told me he weighed 175.
Right.
And he said, I want to send you this picture of this amazing sunset. And I said, an Alabama sunset? I said, I don't know if I even want to see that. We'd already got the big argument over Trump, all that other stuff that went on this week. Not an argument, but, you know, he'll say his ways. And I said, well, you didn't. He washed. I said, I know you did. He said, you're exactly right. But anyway, this morning I looked at my phone and there was a picture of that sunset, and it was a little caption that said, paint this for me. Well, I'm 90% finished.
Oh.
This morning.
Wow.
I just got the paint off of me. And so far, what I've done of it, you know, if I don't look at it, it's beautiful. And it's, but I'd like to finish it today and just send him a bill, you know. I got some money, you know.
Are you not just going to give it to your brother, a painting?
I've gave him so much of that kind of thing, and I'm not going to do that anymore. He'll never get it if you won't pay for it. At least $100.
Wow.
You know. But I don't know. It ain't finished yet, so I don't know what it'll end up doing. Yeah.
So right here we got Benny Carter. This I like these. Did you buy this?
Well, where did I get the goddamn money at? I ain't got the money yet.
Okay.
I'm sure he paid you. I don't
No,
understand.
whoa. You bought this from the auction, right?
Make him talk about it. He bought that then.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Here, sit right here. I gotta go pee.
okay.
All right, we're gonna switch. We're gonna let Kyle talk now. Oh God,
Yeah, I gotta go.
it's so
Yeah.
cold. We'll make it quick. All right, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Oh, do what you like.
Okay, so I bought this at the Ledbetter folk art auction house.
Oh well, I got paid for it then.
You painted this. Do you remember painting this?
Yeah.
Maybe tell them what this is.
Well, it's supposed to be a kind of a picture of Benny Carter, you know, which when I paint something, I just do it the way I want to do it. I knew Benny Carter, but I'm sure that don't really look like him, and it probably piss some of his relatives off or something. I don't care. But every time I painted a picture of him or Sam the Dot Man or something, I just did it the way I wanted to do it, you know. And Matt suggested that I come up with some stuff like that. That he said I think people would like to have it, and I said, well, we'll see. So I did, and that's what one of those are.
Well, I bought it because Matt told me you actually knew Benny Carter.
I did.
You put the birdhouses in there, and you got a taxi cab. So I thought this was
Yeah.
a
But
great piece to have
You
on.
put things in the painting that relate to the main subject of the painting, you know, is a good thing to do. That's what I do anyway. And
Did you do Benny Carter first and then add in the background, or do you remember how you painted it?
well, I pencil sketch, you know, the body of him, and then something like the flag and all. You want to be sure and get that in. 'Cause it takes up so much room, and like I say, I sketch it and then start painting it, and whatever happens, happens. You know, I just add colors and do this and do that, and that's just the way I do it.
And where'd you get the piece that it's painted on? Did you get this?
Oh, that's just an old picture that if probably a good painting under all that, you know. Yeah, and but anyway, I painted over it. You know, I used the proper paints to do that, and it's already framed, and I did the frame totally before I started. The frame was finished with this kind of green matte color, I call it anyway. I try to use something light so all the shit that I put on the painting will show up, you know. And you can do them white or you can do them a light blue or whatever color you want to do them, but it's just got to be a light. You know, you don't want to do them real dark. It just makes it harder to get your painting to show up.
Did you have to use like a really tiny brush for these letters? Because that's kind of
Well, I got little small brushes, and I probably used them for something like that. I can't remember.
well, that was kind of his thing, right? Using the tiniest of brushes.
Yeah. I don't really know, man. I never talked to him about what kind of brushes he used and stuff. I knew him. But I'm just telling you the truth. I never did, you know, care anything about his art or anything when he was doing it. You know, we talked a lot and smoked pot and yeah, best I remember. And
But he was making art when you knew him. So this was after.
oh yeah, he'd made a lot of it, but I didn't care nothing about it, you know. And when the first time I ever met him at his home, he was sitting out there making birdhouses out of chips of nothing pieces of wood, and then he'd have a machinery to help him do that. He was doing it with a coping saw. And I just shook my head, you know. I don't have time in my life to work that slow, you know. But that's the way he done it, and it paid off for him, I guess. Of course, it didn't pay off for him, but it paid off for all the folk art collectors out there that buy his stuff, you know. They're the ones buying it now. And he never got nothing out of it. He'd give those birdhouses away if you showed an interest in them and liked them. He'd give you one or two of them.
Did you ever get a birdhouse?
I had stuff like that from years ago from him, but that stuff doesn't fare well if you just leave it out in the weather.
Yeah.
I know it's supposed to, but it don't. It just crumbles apart. It ain't gonna last long. His churches and all that. I've had 2 or 3 of his churches. One back there on a burning pile now. That totally lost. And one down the driveway, it's just about gone. And I went out there and repainted it one time. It looked real good for a while, and it's faded back out again.
But how did you get to know him? Like, what did he sell antiques to you at some point? Did you have a
No, it was at a party for the very first time. I'm telling you.
so he lived close to you?
No, he lived in Madison, Mayodan, and I was at a party that was on the other side of Alamance, and I was invited to the party, and that's where I met him. And I'll never forget him sitting there in his overalls and all, and he says, "Wait a pussy," and I didn't want to fight or nothing, but I remember him saying that, and the reason he was saying it because I wouldn't partake in when they passed the joint, I just let it go by me. If I wanted to use it, I would use it, but I just wasn't a big deal for that. And when it passed by me and I didn't suck on it, I'll never forget him saying that. And
What'd you say back?
oh, I don't really remember. I never forget him saying that. He was pretty good. He knew when to quit talking, and if he saw he was pissing you off and didn't want to do that, he'd change the subject or something.
What did other people think of him? Was he like
I've never met anybody that didn't
at the party? Was he like holding court talking, or was he kind of like a
sit
weird?
there. No, he never moved. Stoned out of his mind, I reckon, but no, he wasn't no outgoing leader or nothing like that I saw. There were other people there that I'd been there quite a while that day, and all of a sudden I didn't know where I was at. I hadn't moved, and they were all sitting around in a ring there, and all of a sudden the front door opened. And I told the boys with me, I knew very well, Wayne. I said, "Wayne, there's light right there." I said, "Let's go." Well, I remember just nearly about crawling that front door because the house we were in was just packed with this shit. It had hundreds of pieces. It was everywhere. And we were all told not to knock it over or pick it up and touch it and all this shit, And,
That's like when you walk into Matt's house now. He says, "Don't scratch that table."
yeah, well.
Well, I don't know where he went, but thanks for jumping on the episode today.
Do what?
I said thanks for being on the episode today. We can close it out here.
Well, you could just close it out or erase all that stuff. Or where can people buy your art?
Yeah, maybe hold this up and tell them where to buy your art.
Buy it right here. I turned it over to him, Matt, and he's one sells it, and I end up getting cheated out of all of it.
He does pay you for this, right? He doesn't just make you do this, right?
No, it'll be a check written.
Are you stuck?
But he doesn't know me for any of it. I reckon he buys a lot of it himself, And then he might sell it again,